Hello raid class, this is ThatYiGuy. Welcome to my Berserker Blade Vortex guide. If you came here from the showcase video, first of all I want to thank you for watching my videos. Second of all, I'm going to go through and explain what makes this build so viable. Now, I'm going to break this into a couple sections, and I'm going to provide links for you to fast forward and skip through the video and get to the part that you really want. And yeah, feel free to do so, and I will begin now with a skill tree. So with my tree, I immediately went upward from the Marauder path, taking as many life nodes as I can on the way. Now going past Scion allowed me to pick up the HP clusters. Now I will move over my mouse to the general path I took as I leveled. I went left a bit to pick up some damage and AoE. Along the way I also took some dex node that I later respec out of in order to run Blade Vortex at around 38. And also, of course, if you get gear with dex, you can just skip the dex nodes. Now I rush right and then downward in order to get Ball Pack. Because Leech is such an essential part of this build, getting Ball Pack early allows you to be a tanky killing machine. Alright, after getting it, I went to pick up this cluster for DPS, picking out these right there to get a build to where I am right now. For Bandits, I took Oak-Skillpoint-Power Charge. And for jewels, I focus on damage and life or resist. And these are my jewels. For Ascendencies, I took 2 points towards Painreaver first, followed by Cloaked In Savagery when I got my 4th point, and it allowed me to grind through the tough maps later on. So Uber wasn't very difficult, and I was able to face tank him at level 79 while wearing Tabula Rasa and decent other gears. My resist was capped at the time. As for leveling, you don't really need amazing gear. I used some normal ones with spell damage modifiers until I reached 64, and I began getting crits. So at 64 I was also able to use these 2 daggers right here. I then switched to 2 really cheap weapons, right? And if you can't afford these, you can get cheaper ones for like 2 or 3 chaos, as long as I have spell damage, spell crit, and maybe crit modifier if you're feeling like it, or maybe flat damage to spells. Those are all good, and as long as you get 2 of those, you can just get through really hard content. I finished T15 Malachi while using a Tabula Rasa, and then I upgraded myself to the gear you see. And at the time, I had about 6.4k HP. So with Enfeeble and some good dodging, I managed to kill him with a 1 damage modifier. Now Divinarius is a great item because the AoE is amazing for quality of life improvement. Same reason why I took AoE radius so early in the tree. And if you can get the enchant on your helmet, that's great for your endgame as well. But it's absolutely not required. As you can see, I used 2 normal daggers for the most part of my game. Now for the damage links, you can probably see that I'm not using faster spell casting, unlike the old builds, because of the change of Blade Vortex. Now there's only 20 stacks, and with just the Echo Cast, I managed to get to 20 stack very easily. I use Immortal call setup more out of habit than anything. This build doesn't really need it, but I recommend just having it, just for the safety. Occasionally it will save your life and it will smooth out the leveling experience. Now Whirling Blade Fortify adds to the guild build's mitigation. Of course, because Fortify is simply amazing, and it's part of a main selling point of using a dagger other than, Wooden Blade. The Blasphemy Curse, I choose to run curses on Blasphemy and forego some damage auras because I don't need a damage aura, and also the Blasphemy makes cursing much easier, and because I farm so fast, having it just constantly on is really does help. And I run, as you can see, I run both Enfeeble and I also run this Temporal Chains. So for Temporal Chains, it's much better for lower tier maps because you don't want to mitigate their damage so much so that your Cloak or Savagery doesn't proc. For the higher tier maps, because there is a chance of something just literally one-shotting you through Fortify and 7.4k HP, Enfeeble is great, because as long as you even leave you with 1 HP, you can heal up to full in a single second. Well, less than a second, in fact, a single tick of one of your Blade Vortex. Since it hits 20 times a second, you're healing up to full 20 times a second, as long as your Cloaked In Savagery is proccing. So the rest of my gear, nothing really special, just good stats. So look for resist, try to cap out your resist. You don't have to overcap as much as I did here, but yeah, it's good to have that at max. Now for some fighting tips. So for blood magic maps, all you have to do really is to just not run your auras, and the problem's solved. With decent gear, you can even run tier 15s, as I have. You just don't need the auras for it. For reflect physical damage, simply swap in physical to lightning gem, and that should be enough for your leech to offset the reflect, as long as you have decent amount of armor. So if you don't have decent amount of armor and the mitigation isn't enough, you should put in add chaos damage gem. The same goes for reflect elemental damage maps. You swap out the increased fire damage gem for increased duration, as well as turning off the Herald of Fire. Once again, add in add chaos damage gem if that simple swap isn't enough, and you can comfortably run all the reflect maps. Now, last thing to remember is that this build does rely heavily on Cloaked In Savagery, and that's something you should keep in mind. And because of this, there's one weakness of this build, and that is small, fast hits, or in rare cases, lightning thorns. Armor and shield help mitigate the minor ones, while your basic 3% leech make this not a problem most of the time. But in fights like Chevron or Torture Chambers boss who shoots lasers, or any map bosses who use Firestorm or Ice Storm, you have to be careful, mainly because your cloak won't proc and you're stuck with 3% leech. So Fortify and Azirius Promised Flask will be your friend in those situations. Now, for the rest of the game, which is 95% of the hard bosses, they will almost always trigger your Cloaked In Savagery every time they try to kill you, which means you can just face tank them for easy victory, because the chances of them hitting you twice within 0.05 seconds is non-existent, pretty much. I've yet to be one-shot killed by, non-one-shot killed by a boss that does trigger my cloak. So, aside from Core Malachi with 3 damage mods who one-shot kill me, because I forgot to fortify, and Uber Aziri who one-shot kill me because she's Uber Aziri and I accidentally stood in the overlap with Fire Blast, the rest of the game becomes very easy. So I hope this helps you out, and I hope you've, become interested in this build and have urge to try it out. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment asking. And I will be pretty busy this weekend as I'm competing in a card tournament, hopefully trying to win a couple $1,000. But yeah, I will try to reply to the questions as soon as I can. And thank you for watching, and I hope to keep bringing you good content in the future.